This Shabbos is the 15th day of which in the Jewish calendar is a really very important day. It's called Shabbos Nahamu, which I'm sure most people are aware of. People go away for that, because it's after the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks of 3 weeks of mourning. From Shiur Tammuz to Tisha B'Av. So a lot of people obviously go away because Tu B'Av, as it is known, the 15th day of Av, is a very, very, very happy day for the Jewish people. There are many things that happened on Tu B'Av, you see, which were very good for the Jews and so on, In any case, so I wanted to talk about what I think is very important that people have to focus on. What exactly is the Nechama? What is the consolation that we're supposed to have? You see, when you take a look at Jewish history, right? Thousands of years the Jews have been in exile. And exile has gone from, light to a total disaster, which I'll talk about, It's gone from being in a foreign country where the Goyim, non-Jews, don't interfere with Jews, and then it gets worse, where they begin to interfere, and then they begin to have tremendous anti-Semitism, and then they begin to persecute the Jews, and it can get even much worse, where they begin to destroy their businesses, right? And they can begin to kill them. And we've seen all the levels of possibilities for the last 2,000 years. Fortunately we're in America, right? I say that until now anyway. But even in America, we are beginning to see the winds of change. There's a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism, and not only that, the government has become very extreme left. And not only is it anti-Semitism, this country is turning into an anti-religious country. There are forces of change to make this country anti-religious. So obviously it doesn't bode well for Jews in America, and the truth is it doesn't even bode well for many other religions also, you see. So that's after the destruction. Then you have, of course, the great destruction of the temple by the Romans. That happened 2,000 years ago approximately. And then you had something which happened about 500 years before that, which of course is the destruction of the first temple. So it's really been a very hard journey for the Jewish people, you see. So especially for the last 2,000 years. Because we have never been in such a tremendous long exile as we have been now. I mean, now you think about what's 2,000 years. It's hard to imagine 2,000 years have passed since the temple was destroyed. So the question is, they say that you have to be Nahamu. Now, it says a pasuk, which we read, and that's why it's called Shabbos Nahamu, where the Haftarah says, Nahamu, Nahamu, Ami. Be consoled, Ami, my people. Right? Yom Elokeichem, says your God. So we have to understand, how is God consoling the Jewish people really? What is the consolation? You see. And not only that, God uses a double expression. Nahamu, Nahamu. Be consoled, my people. Now, why would God say it twice? You see. So obviously, we have to ask ourselves, what exactly is the Nechama? You see. That's a very important idea. What exactly it is. Now, I will tell you what the Nechama is. Okay? And this is really what it really is. There are many Nechamas, there are many consolations that a person can have. Any easing of suffering is a Nechama. Let's face it. Even a level of easement is a consolation. I want to call it a relief, something good that you hear. Of course that's true, But in terms of Judaism, what is the real Nechama of the Jewish people? Is the fact that the Mashiach is going to come, is that a Nechama? Well, I'm sure it is, But he hasn't come for a long time, you see. And basically the Nechama of the Mashiach isn't the real Nechama. Sounds strange that I say that. Because what the Mashiach will do is end the exile. He will end the journey or the darkness of misery that the Jewish people have gone for thousands of years. That's true. That's certainly a Nechama. If somebody's in prison for 20 years, which is very true, unfortunately, of people in Cuba, where Castro, would put a guy in prison for nothing because he opposed him, he'd be there for 20 years. Imagine being in prison for nothing, being totally innocent. Imagine 20 years of a person's life. And believe me, prison in Cuba is not like prison in America, and so on. It's obvious, It's not anything that you could look forward to, and so on. So imagine all of a sudden one day, the guy's in prison for 20 years, right? And all of a sudden somebody comes up to the prison, right? And he unlocks the door. He says, okay, you're free. And the guy can't believe it. He's free after 20 years. Now that's a Nechama. You know what I'm saying? Wow, that's incredible. Thank God it's over. The years of darkness, the years of doing nothing, staring at the four walls, is over. Now that's an incredible Nechama. You would agree, right? Incredible consolation. Because he's out of prison, right? But there's something else going on that doesn't offer this person any real consolation. What that is? 20 years have passed for nothing. Okay, it's true that I'm out of prison. That's true. So thank God that misery is stopped. Right? 20 years of my life, the person says, just passed for nothing. Why did it pass? Why did I go in prison? You see? Very hard to live with that. That's an unbelievable. So he's going to have what's called post-traumatic stress disorder, PSTD, right? And who knows how many years it's going to have to go with a psychiatrist to get rid of that, because the traumatic experience has been astounding. So even though now he's no longer in prison, that's not you would never say that this is the real Nechama, that he just got out of prison. What he needs is something else, really, to help him solve his problem. The fact that he was in prison for 20 years has to have meaning. It has to have meant something. And not only that, but the fact that he was in prison for 20 years, right, enabled him to be free. Then it would have meaning, you see. But without meaning, he can't get over this. And there are people, obviously, who go through these experiences. They never get over it for the rest of their lives, Why did I have to go through this? Especially when you think about the Holocaust. Okay, thank God the Holocaust is over in 1945, assuming it was over. Then you had to go to a DP camp, displaced person camp, right? You could sit there for 2 or 3 years before they finally found a country that would take you in. You know what I'm saying? So, and even when you finally got out of that DP camp, okay, now you come to another country. Let's say you go to Israel, you go to America. You don't forget the nightmare of the years of the Holocaust. Nobody forgets that. There are people who wake up 30 years later screaming because of a nightmare. Yeah, we know, especially, obviously as the years go on, more and more Holocaust survivors die. So we don't experience it. But if you remember, whatever in the 50s.
And such their children and their grandchildren too.
Of course, yeah, and so on, So obviously, the experience creates a scar, emotional scar, which they never get rid of. You see? Why can't they get rid of it? Because 4, 5, or 6 years, or however long the guy was there, right, has absolutely no meaning. That's the problem. It has no meaning. You see? So therefore, a Nechama has to be something greater than that. It cannot be just a cessation of pain and sorrow and nightmare. Cessation. It ended. No. There has to be meaning or value to what happens. You see? That is a very important idea. This is the problem. Sure, Tisha B'Av is over, but why did God destroy his temples? What's the meaning of the exile for 2,000 years? What's the meaning of the Holocaust, the pogroms, the persecutions, the Inquisition, right? Incredible what happened. But throughout, then you have to talk about the expulsions from the countries. We don't know what that is. We're lucky. We live in America. We now live in the 21st century. So you don't have that crazy kind of thing unless you live in Iran or some of these crazy countries, and so on. But we don't really know what that means. Could you imagine being in a town in Ukraine, 1545, right? And you're in Ukraine, you live there, and all of a sudden you hear Khmelnytsky's coming. Bogdan Khmelnytsky, Ukrainian ruthless, where he killed over 300,000 Jews for no reason. He was angry at the Polish warlords, and he decided to rampage Poland. So he went to Poland, killing Jews left and right, because he was an incredible anti-Semite, So the question, what meaning does all this have? That's why there is no Nechama, really. Not only that, there's nobody that can give you a Nechama. Nobody can console you. You know why? Because nobody knows the answer. How they can console you? Nobody knows the answer, you see. And in fact, there's a Medrash where God says, and it's on this Nahamu Ami, be consoled, my people. It says in the Medrash that God said to the Ovos, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, I want you to go and console my people, right? That the redemption will come, So guess what? They went to try to console the Jewish people. And they failed. Why did they fail? Because consolation is not just that the misery will end. Why do we have to go through this? What's the meaning of this terrible onslaught of the Jews? So they failed. So then God turned to Shmuel HaNavi, and he turned to other incredible Nevi'im. They all failed. So finally God said, okay, I'm the only one that can console them, right? And that's why it says, God says, Nahamu Ami, be console my people, said your God. But they failed. They could not console the Jewish people. And we're obviously talking about the greatest figures in the history of the Jews. The question is, why did they fail? And why does God succeed? And he doesn't succeed because he can do whatever he wants. No. Because God knows what the real consolation is. What is the real consolation? And the answer is, not only will this nightmare cease, the exile, the butchery, the slaughter of the Jews in every country that they're in, but I will tell you why you had to have it. He is the only one that can provide the meaning of what all this means. Very important. And he's obviously the only one. Nobody else can. So in the end, God will tell the Jewish people, I'm going to give you what's called a minute-by-minute play. I remember 50 years ago, there was a TV show called This Is Your Life. I don't know if you remember that. unless you don't want to admit your age, whatever. But anyway, it was an interesting kind of TV show, where they would bring this guy on, whatever, and then all of a sudden they'd be bringing out people from his past that he hadn't seen in 40 years. And it was a whole parade of people that this guy had not seen in 40 years. I mean, you can imagine what this guy was doing, going crazy. The friends and acquaintances, and everybody, maybe former wives, who knows what they brought out, right? That would be unfortunate. But anyway, and they brought this out. It was this, and I remember the MC, Ralph Edwards, if my memory is serving correctly. I don't even know why I remember this, but anyway. But what was interesting about that is, right, this is your life. The guy was able to relive his past. Most of us never get a chance to do that. I mean, not that he relived it, but he was able to reacquaint himself with all his friends and people that he knew when he was growing up and so on, And guess what? There's going to be this is your life when the Mashiach comes. But it's not going to be with Ralph Edwards, that's for sure. And it's not going to be a TV show. It's going to be the greatest production ever known in man's history. Why? Because you're going to sit down and you are going to look at every second of your life, why it happened. Now that only God can produce. Imagine that. Because what God wants to do is justify everything he did. And in the end, what are you going to say? You were right. Everything you did to me, even if I was, at a what do you call it? Let's say a toll booth, right? And it takes quarters. And I put my hand in my pocket, like I came out with a nickel, right? Even then, you were right. That's how exacting it would be, you see. But there's something else that God will say. And this is the real look. Okay, so you're right. Okay, you're right, but I still was terrible, even if you're right. So at least it's one step better, So the guy who gets out of prison without any justification why he was in there in the first place, why am I here in the first place? He never can make peace with what happened, right? But at least in the Messianic era, right, God will be able to justify everything. You see? So this man say, you know what he's going to say? You're right. Everything you did was justice. I deserved it. I mean, I hate to admit it. I was going to say, you are 100% right. Down to the quarter, down to the nickel I pulled out, down to the quarter, whatever aggravation that is. You see? Now, is that the Nechama? No. Although it's not bad. At least a guy can say, whatever happened to me, in many ways, I'm responsible. It's not like because you want to do me in, as they say. I'm responsible. But is that the Nechama really? No. Much better. And here's an example. Imagine a guy, he's feeling very bad, he doesn't know why. He goes to a doctor, right? Doctor listens to him, whatever, blood test, whatever. And he says, I got bad news for you. You have a bad case of cancer. Bad news. That's like for everybody's a death sentence. Because he doesn't know. He doesn't know if he's going to live or die. And if he even lives, what does what the guy have to do? Take out the organ? I mean, it's a death sentence. It's part of the English. Anyway, so the guy says, okay, but who can correct this? He says, okay, I got to send you to an oncologist. Those are the guys that treat cancer, right? And so he goes to an oncologist, right? And the guy does whatever, the MRIs, the X-rays, everything that he needs to do. Has a meeting with the guy, and he says, I want to tell you something. You have a very bad cancer, and it's in a very bad place. Which means, basically, it's inoperable. Can't take it out. And there are those. Some cancers grow right by the brainstem. So if you cut out the cancer, you cut the guy's brainstem. He's dead. And there are or right in the middle of the brain. How do you get there? And so on, So the oncologist says, I'm really sorry to say this, but you can't operate. It's inoperable, which means that if we do operate, you're dead. So it's over. So we'll give you 3 months, right? And the guy goes home, sits down, and he is fit. He's devastated. Because it's over. There's not even a hope. Then all of a sudden, a day goes by, and the oncologist calls him. He says, I want to tell you something. It is inoperable, but there's one surgeon somewhere, in, let's say, South Africa, who is the only surgeon in the world that takes on this type of cancer. And he's very good. So the guy can't believe what he's hearing. You see? So the oncologist says, and it happens to be that this guy is going to be in America for 2 months because he wants to instruct others how to do that. So if you want, I can put you in during the time he's here. And what's the guy going to do? He's going to perk up and say, do it. What's the question? Do it, because anyway it's finished. So he meets with the guy from South Africa, the surgeon, so on and so forth. And the guy says, you have a very hard case, but I think I can do it. And the guy's going to say, with the help of God, of course, I think I can do it, right? And the guy, he goes on surgery, and the guy is successful. He got rid of all the cancer. Astounding, right? So this guy goes over to the surgeon, right? Doesn't say, you were right that you cut out the tumor. You're right. That's not what he says. Thank you. He says, thank God you cut out the tumor. Thank God that he was able to go under the surgery, the knife, right? And that there was a way out. You see? What do you mean? He went under the knife. Surgeon had to cut him up, whatever he did, right? That's not the way he looks at it. He thanks God that there was a surgeon that cut him up and therefore cured him. That's the difference. You see? That's the real Nechama. Of course, it's unfortunate that he had the cancer and so on. But in the end, he had an unbelievable Nechama. That there was a guy that could cure him, and it worked. When God sits down with you in the Messianic era, right? He's not going to just to prove to you that what he did was just, and therefore it's really everything that happened to you, your fault, you caused it, your sins and everything, right? Much greater than that. God is a surgeon. He said, listen, you did such and such a sin, and I bore all this punishment for whatever I did to you as an atonement, you see? And if it wasn't for that atonement, guess what? You would not live in Olam Haba. You'd never get it. Because with the amount of sins that you did, you cannot get the future world. It's over, you see. So God says, but I have a remedy. I'm the surgeon from South Africa. So what are you going to say to God? You were just? You're not going to say that. He said, there is no way I could thank you for saving me and allow me to be in the future world. You can't even give a thanks for that. Because the future world, Olam Haba, is what? Is infinite bliss eternally. Don't match that. Can't. Because it's not that you live for an endless time. After 1 billion years have passed, it hasn't even begun. Because it's infinite. And while you're in that Olam Haba, you are having infinite bliss. So you don't say to God, you were right and I was wrong. No. You say, how can I thank you for saving me? That's Nechama. You see? That's the truth, because what it does is it gives meaning to why he had to go through everything. And only God knows why. You see? Because nobody can judge a person that way. You see? So that's the double notion of Nahamu. be consoled. Be consoled, Jews, my people, Ami, right? Because it will end, the Golos will end, the anti-Semitism will end, right? And not only will it end, you will be the supreme nation of the entire planet, where everybody's going to run to be next to you. Groupies, right? You know what groupies are? They're going to all run. Why? Because you're the only one that can bring down the divine presence. You see? And they want to get next to you so it can rub off on them. Right? Why do people love celebrities? You know? What do they get out of that? You're not the celebrity. You know, he's getting all the glory and the money. What are you getting? You know? Oh, but maybe if I stand next to the guy, some of his mazel will rub off on me. You know? And it's also vicarious. Oh, you know, if I look at the guy, I can make believe I'm really the guy. Whatever the psychological forces determine this, you know? But in this case, it's not vicarious. The Jews will be able to be the conduit for the divine presence. We don't even know what that means, right? So could you imagine every guy will want to touch the hem of your garment, or in modern days, you know, the hem of your jacket, and so on. You know, the women will touch the women's dress, and the men will touch the men's jacket, so on. Why? Because if they can touch you, they can actually feel the divine presence. So the Jews will be the greatest nation on earth, greater than any nation ever known. You see? And what it says in the Novi, that kings and queens will run to touch you. Kings and queens. You know, forget about the regular guys. And it says that every Jew, right, will have 10 goyim as servants to serve him. Why? Because they're hoping to grab some of that divine presence. Because it's like drugs. It's not like drugs. It's infinitely greater than a drug. You see, because the Nechama experiences it. And so on. So that's incredible Nechama. You know, that you go from a 0 to 100, right? That's not the Nechama. The Nechama is what God says, if it wasn't for the pogroms, right? If it wasn't for the, you know, the expulsions, inquisitions, exiles, Holocaust, if it wasn't for this, you would not be here. You could not survive it. That's the Nechama. So then you're okay. Like this guy with the surgeon. You know? What's he going to do? Scream at the surgeon and say, how dare you cut me up? What is he going to do? Is that what he's going to do? Or you were wrong in doing this? The guy's going to look at me. You crazy? I just saved your life. Gave you another 40 years to live. To enjoy your family and all that, right? That's the Nechama. That's a very important concept. That the real Nechama is, right, that not only what I did was just, God will say, but if I didn't do it, you'd be finished. You could not get the future world based on the conditions that I created or laid out in order to get the future world, which I had spoken about a couple of weeks ago, the whole concept of bread of shame, and so on. But these are the conditions. You don't follow it, it's over. You see? So that's an incredible Nechama that we know that no matter what we do, right? God is the doctor. That's very comforting. That not only what happens to us is prescribed exactly what we need. You see? But if we don't have it, we don't get anything. That is why God is always looking around for people to alleviate the sins of the Jews in some way. Because the problem is, and we don't know why, because we cannot measure the effect of sin, right? The problem is that, you know, that the sins of the Jews over the thousands of years is so great, really, that they need an assist. They can't do it on themselves. With all the punishment God can give them, and that's a lot, they cannot survive on their own. And I once told you, in previous Shiur and so on, that in the beginning of time, Medrash, Yalkut, incredible Yalkut, Shmoini, which is a Medrash, collection of Midrashim, But God goes over to the Mashiach ben Yosef. In the Medrash, he's called Mashiach ben Ephraim. That's the same person. And he says, in the end of time, your people will be destroyed. Clear. He says that clearly, openly. Mashiach ben Yosef. And the Mashiach ben Yosef is dumbfounded. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean all the Jews, but there will be a significant number of Jews that don't make it. You know, a great deal of Jews will make it, but there's a nice, significant minority that won't make it. Now, whatever it is, 25%, 40%, it's bad news. So the Mashiach ben Yosef says, okay, but I know that you allow other people to atone for somebody else. So that's part of the process. So the Mashiach ben Yosef says that he will accept the suffering for every person that can't make it on his own. From the beginning of time, for every Jew, he will accept that suffering. It's astounding. That's what he's saying, and Mashiach ben Yosef, So God looks at him, and that's what God needed. Because they can't make it on their own. Now, we don't know why, because we don't know what the measure is. But God knows why, see? And what he does is just, you see? So here's a person, Mashiach ben Yosef, that not only is he a Messiah, but he actually says, I will atone, that he is going to assist in the atonement of every Jew that can't make it on his own. That's a lot of people, right?
Wow.
So he says, okay. God said, okay. So God takes, it's all in the Medrash, takes a yoke of iron. You ever see these water buffalo? But these yokes that these guys carry? Water buffalo is a very strong animal, right? And he takes this yoke that you put on oxen, right? And he puts it on the neck of Mashiach ben Yosef. Interesting. And the yoke obviously represents all the sins of the Jews that can't make it, or that cannot be atoned, because no matter how many lifetimes God brings them back, it's not enough. You see? So he puts that on his neck, and the Mashiach ben Yosef bends down, and he starts screaming. He says, I can't do this. I can't tolerate this. It must have been incredible. The suffering that he would have to bear to atone. So God says, but you said you would do it. You promised in that sense, And look what is at stake. So God says to Mashiach ben Yosef, but okay, I will go with you in exile. In other words, I will suffer. Not that God suffers, but God will do things which clearly could be frustrating to him. This is the grief. And I will go into the exile with them. And that's a profound Kabbalistic mystery, where the Shekhinah is in Golus. The divine presence is in exile. What it means is that he allows the Satan to take from the energy of the Shekhinah, that's a very powerful energy, right? And use it to destroy the Jews, or to empower nations that they should destroy the Jews. You see? That's what it means that the Shekhinah is in exile. Why? So he will be together with the Mashiach ben Yosef. It's like two can bear it easier than one. You see? So then the Mashiach ben Yosef says, okay, now that you'll be with me, I will bear. If you can bear it, if the master can bear it, so I can also, the slave will also bear it. You see? And then the Midrash goes on to say that what the Mashiach ben Yosef did was unparalleled in Jewish history. Unparalleled because he accepted the suffering, the alleviation of every Jew that can't make it. You see? That's beyond belief. So the Medrash goes on to say that in the end of time, when the Mashiach ben Yosef appears, finally, right, then, and this is talking about the Messianic year of Mashiach ben David, right? And after Kessin, resurrection of the dead, then Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, they'll all go over to this person, Mashiach ben Yosef, and say, you are much greater than us. You see, because, we were forerunners, we were models for the Jewish people, but you accepted unbelievable suffering for the Jewish people. You see. So what do we see? We see it's not simple, that there are actually people at the beginning that God said they can't get Edom Apple, and they're Jews. So you needed an assist by the Mashiach ben Yosef in order to do this. And he's not the only one. Throughout the generations, there are many tzaddikim that suffer, and they are sort of like assistants of assistants, which is not the same as Mashiach ben Yosef. But they sort of like ease the burden where they accept the suffering. And that's a possibility, you see? So this is what we see. So we're not looking here, get a Haba, what's the big deal? No. That there are things that God has to do in order to ensure that every Jew will be an Olam Haba, you see. And that's the Nechama. That no matter what happens, right, they will all be an Olam Haba. That's a very important concept, you see. Therefore, what we now realize is this. This is the most important idea you will hear. God made an agreement with the Jewish people. That's called the Torah. You do my commandments, right? And I will give you the future world. Correct? That's a contract. It's a legal contract. It is so legal that God will enforce it. It's interesting. So we're not talking here about the Supreme Court that breaks their rules, you see, and defies their own mission and so on. This is God talking. And the Jews entered the contract. They said, Nasa v'nishma. We entered it. They said, Nasa, we will do, v'nishma, and we will hear. First we'll do, even though we don't understand, and then we'll labor to understand. So the Jews sort of signed on the dotted line, right? And God signed in his dotted line. You see? It's a contract. And it's called the bris, the covenant, the agreement. And God is always reminding the Jews of the covenant. You see? The amazing thing is this. This is probably the greatest Nechama you can imagine, besides what I just said before. But this is incredible. If you enter a contract, right, where you say to a guy, let's get into a contract, right? I want to buy your house, right? You name a price? And he says, okay, we'll enter a contract that we both agree that I will sell my house to you and you will buy my house from me. It takes mutual, correct? Okay. What happens? Say, okay, you got it. Everything's got to be given over. We got 1 month. You have to pay me, right? After a month goes by, right, the buyer doesn't show up with any cash. It doesn't come with any money. So the seller, all in the lawyer's office, right? And the buyer doesn't come up with any money. So the seller says, excuse me, I'm not giving you my house. So the buyer says, why not? Why not? We got a contract, So that's the buyer. Huh? The seller says, what, are you crazy? You just breached your contract. If you don't keep your end of the deal, guess what? I don't keep my end of the deal. I'm not going to give you my house for free. You see what I'm saying? Of course, everybody understands that. You broke your side of the agreement. It's a bilateral agreement. You broke it. It's over. Ask yourself. God made an agreement with the Jewish people, right? What did the Jewish people do? They break it all the time, right? They sin. Why else would God destroy his temple? Why would he destroy it twice? Why would he exile? You see? That's a toichacho. In Parshas Ekev, right? Or B'chosai, right? And Kisavoy, there's a whole toichacho. There's an entire section where God says, if you do not observe my commandments, this is what I'm going to do to you. And there's a whole bunch of curses, terrible curses, that will happen that God says, this is what I'm going to do if you don't observe my commandments. Because we made an agreement. Right? That's really what the Torah is. We breached the agreement, and God says, this is what I'm going to do. And God can do it, obviously. You can't stop him. He can do it because you breached the contract. You see? Well, what's the incredible thing about all that? It's amazing. Why didn't God walk away from the agreement? He should have said, hey, you don't do what I asked you to do. I'm not going to do what I said I would do. I'm not giving you Idam Haba. You're no longer my chosen people, right? You breach your contract every day, every year. And that's why you people are in Golis for 2,000 years. There's a reason for all this. Because you're always breaching the contract. What's astounding is, how come God doesn't walk away? And if he did, it's over. Why do you think the Jews exist today after 4,000 years? Because God never walked away. The original agreement still stands. You need to observe the contract. And even though you're breaching it all the time, right, I'm not going to walk away. It's incredible. It's unheard of in legal framework that God does this. You see, any lawyer's office, that would be the end of the contract, right? But God doesn't do that, you see. You can't believe what that means. Because as long as God says, I'm going to remain with the contract, except I'm going to exact payment in a way you don't like, whatever, which is we'll talk about, right? I am going to remain with the contract. Where did the Hashem say that? He says that in B'Shul Koisai. He gives a whole list of terrible things. One person, is going to chase 1,000 of you. That's how frightened you'll be. There's no people chasing you and you're going to still run away. You're going to get this sickness and that sickness. You will die and this and that. A mother will eat her children for food. I don't want to even go through all this stuff. It's in the Torah, right? We can't believe, what it says there, right? Why doesn't God say, hey, I'm out of here? He doesn't say that. But he does say this at the end of all the curses that make your hair stand up. You see? He says, and even though they are in a foreign land and so on, right? I will loy ma'astim, I will not despise them. Loy ga'altim, and I will not reject them. To do what? What does rejection mean? Lahofer brisi, to cancel my agreement. I won't do it. He says that openly. Because that's the obvious question. What are you still around for? So he answered the question. That is a no, that cannot be. I will not abrogate the contract. I will be Ani Hashem, I am God, right? I will always be a case of your God. I will always be that, no matter what you do. You see?
Unconditional love.
Correct. It's an unbelievable, which doesn't exist. You don't give a guy, okay, here's my house, even though you're not paying me a dime. Nobody does that. Or any kind of contract. You don't deliver, the other side doesn't deliver. You see? But the Hashem doesn't say that. So what do we realize? That's one of the greatest Nechamas ever known, where a being will violate or doesn't care about the violation of a contract. He will never leave the Jewish people. He will ask for different conditions, yes. That's what the Teichacha is. The Teichacha is really an alternative payment. But that's an unbelievable chesed. He doesn't have to do that. He made an agreement, right? You do A and I will do B. You see? But he doesn't say that. He says, even if you don't do A, all the mitzvahs and so on, I will still have the contract, and therefore I will take payment in a different form. You see? What does that mean for us? That means that God will never abandon the Jewish people. Never. That means this. No matter what you do, and I do not encourage it, what you do, but no matter what you do, you will always subject to the agreement. That means that every Jew, whether by hook or crook, which means by doing mitzvahs, or by getting the toicha, all the punishments and so on, will be in Oyim Haba. That's what it means. It's astounding. In other words, the end game, we win, no matter what.
So you're saying even the good people are going to go to Olam Haba right away, but the people that need to work on it, there's going to be consequences in the beginning, and then they're going to reach Olam Haba, or everyone at the same time are going to reach?
No. Each one goes in like level. Yeah, like the Zoya. There's a Zoya that says.
So it's the same thing like when like when a person passes away. There's different levels of where they.
Of course, but more than that, Kessin, resurrection of the dead. So the Zoya says, which happens when Mashiach ben David. Mm-hmm. But the question is, when Mashiach ben David comes, is everybody going to rise? No. It says Kessin, resurrection of the dead will take place over 210 years. There are guys who wake up in the beginning. I'll rise in the beginning. And then there are guys who are going to rise 80 years after Mashiach ben David. Then there are guys who are going to rise 200 years after Mashiach ben David. You see? Yeah, it doesn't. No way. You know. So nobody knows. You know, and it all depends on what sins. How much did they breach of the agreement? That's the incredible thing. What is guaranteed is everybody will wake up in Kessin eventually. You know, but they don't wake up at the same time. You see. So the Nechama is this. I mean, it's something we need to think about. That the contract was never nullified. Never. And that is the reason why no matter what the Jews do, they must exist. They will always exist. They will never disappear. Why? Because God insists that He will not break the contract. If He did, we'd be gone. That would be the end of the Jewish people. Why? Because the natural forces of history has destroyed every nation of antiquity. Think about that. There are no Babylonians anymore, right? There's no original Greeks or Romans, Assyrians, right? They're all gone. Egyptians, they're all gone. The originals, why? Because they never had an agreement with God, who is the only being that can ensure that they exist. Without that agreement, we're subject to the rules of history. It means we're here one day and we're gone the next. You know, for whatever purpose God needs a nation, we're gone the next. That's why the Jews are eternal. You know, it's funny, Mark Twain recognized that. It's a famous statement where he said, the Jews are one of the greatest mysteries of all, you know, because nothing seems to affect them. They never disappear. And he says that, you know, if you want to discover about you know, ancient Greece, you got to dig down 6 feet or maybe 100 feet to look for the civilization. You see, the Jew is still around. And Mark Twain said he is thriving just like he did 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. You know, maybe he's a little bent over and all that, but he's basically thriving. Why? Because God will not walk away from the agreement. Don't think it's because of Jewish ingenuity or mazel or whatever, because the Jews have great heads or whatever. No. Because he says, Lo ma'astem, I will not despise them. Lo ga'altem, and I will not reject them. Lahofer brisi, to abrogate, to annul my covenant. Won't do it. That, to me, if you think about it, is the greatest Nechama ever known. Because that's what guarantees us infinite bliss eternally. Without that, we would have disappeared a long time ago. Believe me. There would be no Teal, New Jersey, right? No Lakewood, no Brooklyn, no Israel, nothing. It would be gone. We would have gone the ways of the Romans, the Greeks, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, all those guys. So to me, that's an unbelievable thing that he could have done that. Anybody would have done that. I mean, who is part of an agreement, right, where the other side doesn't keep as the end of the bargain? Nobody does that. What God did do, you see, so the first great Nechama is that God said, I will not abrogate, nullify the agreement. Incredible. The second agreement, the second aspect what God did, the Nechama, is therefore He chose an alternative system to do the tikkun. Because without that, hey, you know, you're still not paying. You know, you got to do something. So I'm going to create an alternative system to bring the Geula. And that's only because he's not going to abrogate the covenant, the agreement. So he's got to do something, and he's still got to deserve it, because what I said, Nahamu Ksufa, hurt of shame. But I'm going to give you an alternate path. These things are beyond belief. What can be greater than Nechama? That you know that no matter what you do, not that I'm suggesting that you do anything you want, but no matter what you do, in the end, God will refuse for you not to be in the Olam Haba. You tell me that? Refuses. And therefore God says, Ani Hashem, I am God. I can deliver exactly what I say. I'm God. Therefore anything I say, you can go to the bank. It's greater security than a CD, or the Federal Reserve. Much greater, So I've told you, different Nechamas where God will sit down with you and say you're free. No. He will say what I did was justified, and he will show you, no. He will say that whatever I did for you is the prescription you needed to even survive. You see, that's the surgeon, right? But even that, when you think about it, although it's a tremendous Nechama, but the real Nechama is consolation, that God is an unusual contract person. He just refuses to give up and throw it away and say, you guys are not following what I say. I'm going to pick somebody else. Which he could have done, by the way. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he would have found somebody. I doubt it. I doubt if what he found is that can even come close to what the loyalty of the Jew is. Because the loyalty of the Jew is beyond belief. How many people gave their lives, when they were threatening, Christianity or whatever. And they refused to bend to the threats of the nations and so on. But this is in a Nechama, I don't think that people realize, And therefore, the Nechama is that no matter where you are, what you do, how bad you are, you will be in the future world. However, there are conditions, and you're not going to like the conditions. That's what the Teichacha is. That's the rebuke. Those two pashas, that's what they are. You see? Those are the alternatives. But he's going to stick to the bargain. You see? And that's a very important idea. I believe that really is the Nechama.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So remember how in Mitzrayim there were 14 million in the beginning, 11 million died in Makat Befarah, and there's only 3 million.
Makat Chosha?
Yeah, Chosha, sorry.
Okay.
Chosha. And the only 3 million went out. So they say, so now we're only having...
Well, you get 14 million.
Didn't you say that one?
There weren't a lot of people. I think I said that, but okay.
Okay, anyway, so now we say, nowadays the same thing's going to happen. Most Jews aren't going to be around. So do they get the Olam Haba, or you're only specifically...
Who's they?
Okay, let's say now...
Those Jews that died in the darkness?
In the darkness. Achari Kedeshi is going to happen again.
Everybody gets Olam Haba.
Everyone.
That's what Ben Yosef said. I'll take it on. Everybody. Including... Because remember, he's at the beginning of time.
Right.
So he means everybody from here on in. In fact, he says, the way he really says it, the Mendel, is that I will take on me the suffering, is what he says, for every Jew that lives in my time, before my time, all the way to the beginning of time, whoever is a Ben Olam Haba, who is in the contract, I will take it on. Even if they intermarried and doesn't matter? Doesn't matter. God has a solution for everybody. We may not like the surgeon. The guy doesn't like the surgeon. I mean, he doesn't want to be under the knife while this guy's operating on his brainstem, right? But that's why he survives. Yeah, so that's the same idea. The Teichacha is the medicine. Bad news. But at least the person will be in Olam Haba. You know where you really see this? I'll give you this example. It says in the Medrash that Esav is pretty bad character. That Esav is in Gan Eden, and he sneaks up to a higher level. Now, how do you sneak up to a high level in Gan Eden?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't say. We don't know. But the real question is, what's he doing in Gan Eden?
Huh?
What do you mean? How'd you get in there? Gan Eden is for, real just, not just tzaddikim, but, righteous people who, whoever, right?
But after a while, don't they go to
How did he get it? No, there's no alternative. You either get Gan Eden or you get annihilation. There's no in between.
Oh, I thought let's say they go to God forbid.
Yeah.
No, they go. Can't they work on? Okay, they get suffering, whatever, and then afterwards they
No.
They just have to stay there.
They don't stay there. What they do is they take a guy like Hitler, right. We cannot even begin to imagine what God's going to do to him.
Wow.
We don't know. I mean, only God can figure out what to do to this man.
Right.
So what's going to happen to him? He's going to be in Gehenna, and he's going to get the full wrath of Gehenna, whatever that is. We have no idea.
Right.
And then after he's finished, because nothing is infinite, that's why what the Christianity says, you burn in hell for the rest of infinity. It's nonsense. There's nothing that's worth infinity. Nothing. But he's going to be there. We don't know how long, but even Gehenna is over when Olam Haba starts. So obviously, it's intensified, and the problem with him is he can't die. So it's not like he can die and get himself out of this. Whoever he is not subject to death, and therefore they turn on the heat, whatever that is. Not really heat, whatever it is, and then after he's finished, right, he's annihilated. He disappears. Returns.
Is that common?
No, not Chorus, because Chorus is a punishment in this world. Ibud, it's called Ibud. He's gone.
It doesn't go to
No, of course, no. Because there's a certain threshold that you have to pass.
So when you pass away, it's either you enter right away?
The thing is, there's a threshold to get Olam Haba. But what God does with the Jews is he makes sure you pass the threshold.
Oh.
That's what he does. Or else how can you get in?
Let's say there's a very bad Jew.
He comes back as a severely
Oh, yeah, he'll come back.
Of course. Or he gets Gehenna. We don't know. I mean, there's a lot of, but there's annihilation. All of these people that hated the Jews, that destroyed Jews, that are responsible for untold horror, they are annihilated. But they're not annihilated first. They have to undo the sin first, the damage. That's Gehenna.
Wow.
Yeah. Or they come back, which is, it could be a series of punishments. They can come back with an incredibly, severely deformed human. And I mean severely deformed. I mean, there are people you see sometimes which you can't even believe that they're human. If you work, I don't work with these people, but really are. They have the IQ of an 8-year-old and they're 48. We don't even begin to imagine what God can do to a person. So whatever their punishment is, they get it, and then they're annihilated. See? So I asked the question about Esau. How did Esau do it? And the answer is because Esau really was Jewish. Think about that. His father was, right?
Yeah.
Yitzchak, mother was Rivka. So even Esau, God was able to get into Canaan.
Wow.
That's the guarantee. You see?
Wow.
So maybe part of his punishment was that his head went into Kira.
That wasn't a punishment.
That's not a punishment. It's dead. But what was is symbolic that the head of Esau was good.
Totally.
Just the body was terrible. You see? So that where we see that people that God in some way gets. And even though there's a Gemara that says, a Mishnah and so on, these are the people that do not get Olam Haba. Somebody talks Lashon Hara all the time. What's the name of Chofetz Chaim? Right? Somebody is a constant speaker of Lashon Hara. He doesn't get Olam Haba. Yes, there are many others, So what does God do with those guys? The answer is, you're right. They don't get Olam Haba according to the judgment. But because God never let go of the contract, He'll get him to the threshold with terrible suffering. That's what that means. He's got his ways. How to get you over the line. See?
So that terrible suffering, that's going to be during the time of Techiyat HaMetim? Like, let's say...
then? No.
Yeah, like let's say now the person spoke terrible Lashon Hara all their life, but now Mashiach came. So now, how does he get the Olam Haba if Mashiach's already here?
Well,
he can't reincarnate. So do you know?
Well, he won't get Kessin. He first has to die.
Don't we all die?
We all die, and then we get up based on the merits. Right. This guy dies and he stays put.
Oh.
And he stays put for 150 years. And in those 150 years,
he's
suffering. And then he gets up.
So the Techiyat HaMetim is technically like a process of purification.
Yes. Well, it's the end of your trials and tribulations. When you can get up, it's over. You've expiated completely. You are completely free of any sin or taint of sin. When you get up.
Rabbi, is 150 years is the time frame going to be the same as it is now, or is it like the way it was olden times? Amy's sister Renat.
Oh yeah. What are you saying? What was the question?
How will we measure time? Will it be the same time frame as we're living now, or will it be like the same time frame of Adam Harishon?
Well, until the end of Messianic era, it'll be the same time frame. You know?
No, so you said like 150 years, and then after they'll wake up, but that's already Messianic time. So I'm saying once we get to that Messianic time, how do we measure time?
It'll be the same thing, by every year. You know what I mean?
Okay.
A year will be a regular year.
12 months.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
So Mashiach ben Yosef is the one who atones. But do other people throughout history help atone for
Yes. Yes.
Like Mabram?
Yeah, there are Jews who are very righteous, and the Gemara talks about many people. They're called the Sovlei Chiloim, those who bear the suffering for people who bear the suffering of Jews. Yeah, but Mashiach ben Yosef is the greatest one, the one who suffers, because he accepted it. You know, there's a Gemara that talks about Rabbi Yochanan, one of the great sages. You know. And he went to visit Rabbi Elazar, if I remember correctly, in Brochus. And Rabbi Elazar was suffering, you see. So Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "You want these sufferings?" So Rabbi Elazar said, "I don't want them, and I don't want the reward that comes from having them." So Rabbi Yochanan said, "Okay." And he cured him, however he did that. That's what they wanted to do. Now, what does that Rabbi Yochanan say? What do you mean, do you want them or not? If they're coming because of sin, you don't have a choice. And he did, because he was part of this Sovlei Chiloim. He was part of, that suffering was to help atone for the sins of other Jews. So that's why the only time you can get that is if you have to willingly accept it. So that's why he asked him, do you want that? He said, no, I don't want them, I want their reward. What a reward? You should have said, I don't want them and I don't want their atonement. No, because a person who accepts, which is also very interesting, a person who suffers for the Jewish people, his reward is incredibly magnified. In fact, there are people, which is interesting, I'll tell you this, there are people who died now, COVID, who should not have died. What God did, however, is he knows what will be. He says, if I keep you alive, you're gonna earn throughout your lifetime, because he knows. Let's say 10 pots of gold. Give me an example, right? But if I take you because I need people to atone for the Jewish people, your death will tremendously help, and therefore your pot won't be 10 pots, it'll be 1,000 pots. what do you think the guy would say? Take me, right?
Like a crime.
Sure. I mean, even though the guy's dying, he's dead, right? So there are many people who died as the process of, because when a tzaddik dies, is an atonement for the Jewish people. They died to help alleviate whatever this COVID is doing for the Jewish people, because God saw that whatever they're going to do in their life won't compare to what I'm going to give them, because they died for the sake of the Jews. There are so many cheshbonis. There are so many accountings and reckonings. We have no idea. So you don't know what happens and why. You could see somebody who's a righteous guy, and he's suffering. Or the guy's poor, and you know he's a real righteous person. You know what I'm saying? That's why everything is topsy-turvy today. See? Because these guys may be suffering for the Jewish people. So their reward will be, will be absolutely incredible. You see? So we don't really know what's going on with who and what. You see? But in the end, nobody loses. Nobody. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
Oh, Rabbi, the Shekhinah is in exile.
Yes.
And the Shekhinah is going to leave.
Is this, by the way, is this on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, because she came in. Okay, good, yeah. What did you say?
And then how do we know when the Shekhinah leaves?
Leaves what?
The exile with them.
It doesn't leave. Well, what happens is Mashiach ben Yosef leaves the exile. He leaves his prison. As I told her, especially Mashiach ben Yosef, he is now suffering terribly because of the bargain that he made with God 6,000 years ago, almost, right? 5,781 years ago. So when he leaves, that's called the Pekida. But the interesting thing about it is that when he leaves, right, so in order for him to get the, what's called the Yechida, God has to leave also the Klippa. But what is interesting is God leaves but does not reveal himself. In other words, he's in this quasi-state. He leaves, but he can't reveal himself. When he can reveal himself, that's the redemption. That's Ben David. When he is exposed, he says, okay, here I am. And now we can all experience the Shekhinah. You see the way it works?
What kind of suffering does the Mashiach ben Yosef go through? Like, we're talking physical suffering, we're talking emotional suffering. What kind of suffering does he suffer?
I would imagine that it's physical, or rather it's emotional, you know. But the suffering that he has to go through is basically a fundamental type of suffering reserved for very great people. What that is? So it's not physical. It is an inability to become spiritual. You know? Like we were speaking about the Dvekas.
Mm-hmm.
It's an inability to access God.
Wow.
You see? And for a person who has this enormous spiritual potential, and he cannot access God, or he can't access spirituality, that's his prison. He has this incredible, you know, if you want to understand that, imagine somebody like the Vilna Gaon, who was an unbelievable person, right? And imagine if the Vilna Gaon has OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where he can't learn, or whatever. He's got these incredible anxiety attacks. So what can he do? It's very hard for him to learn because he's always anxiety-ridden. He has a tremendous turmoil. He's depressed. You name it. You know? What do you think the Vilna Gaon? And he's still the Vilna Gaon in terms of his potential, not his actual. What do you think he would feel? It's probably a basket case. Sounds interesting. Yeah. That is the Yisur of Mashiach ben Yosef. See? Where he is like a Vilna Gaon in potential. And he cannot actualize being a Vilna Gaon. Can you imagine the suffering that this individual has to feel? Interesting. So it's a very rare, very unusual type of suffering that he is denied spirituality. That's what kills these people.
But they have to have a glimpse of it.
They do. That's why he feels such pain. If they didn't, who cares? Exactly. No. He has to have enough spirituality to know what he's missing, and to realize how incredible it is, and God will not let him have maybe a little minuscule of this. Now, could you imagine what this guy is doing, or what he's thinking, the grief that he has, you know? And to boot, he doesn't even know he's Mashiach ben Yosef. He doesn't know in the beginning. Say, hey, he can't figure out what's going on. It has no meaning. Makes no sense. You see? So he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know why he's suffering. He has no idea what in the world is going on. You see? But the bottom line is that it's a tremendous amount of pain. You know what I'm saying? I give you an example of the Vilna Gaon. But the truth is, people struggle to fulfill their potential. But the potential of this person is awesome. And he knows it. So he's got a glimpse of that. So he can't do it. However God can block him. There's many ways God can block anybody. All kinds of psychiatric disorders, physical disorders. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it is, he's blocked. So that's the suffering of the Mashiach ben Yosef. The unique suffering. It's called miyut or, the blockage or the diminishment of light, of ruchnis. That's his suffering. And that is a kapara for the Jewish people.
Do you think people that have like autism and ADHD and all that, do you think that's their suffering?
Yes, most of it. Huh? It's part of the, if you want to really know what's sad, just take a look at the Teicha.
What?
Teicha, the rebuke at the end of Bichur Koisai. Just see what God says. You know? That's mild compared to what's in the Chumash. What it's going to look like. I mean, it's incredibly severe. Just look at the Chumash. I don't make this up. It's all there. Bichur Koisai. Take a look at that. And it's also in Kisavoy, which is in Dvorim. Just those two, those are the famous places where people try not to get the Aliyah.
Mm-hmm.
You know? They don't want the Aliyah. This is God talking, you know? And that's what he had to do to create an alternative, because he does not want to give up the contract. So, is it good or bad? Right? Well, no, it's not Ganzu Tova. The guy thanked the surgeon. I mean, it was not good, you know. But without that guy, it's over. He's dead. So you ask yourself, that's your quandary or conundrum, as they say, when you go to bed at night. Ask yourself, is that a Nechama or not with the surgeon? And that's the exact situation for the Jewish people. God is the surgeon. As he says, Ani Hashem Rafecha, I am God, your healer. Says that, right? By Mitzrayim. I won't bring any of the diseases that brought on Egypt. I won't bring them on you. Why? Because I am God, your healer. Well, that's it. That's it. You know. That's it. You know. That's all. You know. So you ask yourself. But like I say, in the end, the main thing is to get the Ilam Haba. It's true. It could be a difficult trek, as they say. But let me tell you something. The first 30 seconds in Ilam Haba, you're not going to remember anything about this world. It's over. Don't think you're going to say, wow, you know, oh, it was incredible. I lived a deal. It was just great and all that. That's over with. You know, the Olam Haba is so overwhelmingly good. You're not going to think of anything else. Oh, I had this great vacation in Paris, you know, and I went to see kids.
Are you going to think, oh, I should have done more?
Yes. We'll think that. Oh, I didn't know it was so good. If I would have known that, oh, I wasted all that time, you know, going to parties, You know what people do? Watching shows. What I could have earned. Oh, yeah. But that also will disappear. Because how could you have that eternally? You go out of your mind. That'll be an eternal depression.
So I have a question. Let's say someone who did watch TV, but in their lifetime stopped.
That's tshuva.
But for the years that you did, do you still feel remorse when you're in Olam Haba?
Well, it depends. If you do tshuva because of fear, so the sin is erased. But you can't bring back what you could have done. Right? But if you do tshuva me'ava, because you love God, right, then all those averos will be turned into mitzvahs. Isn't that interesting?
Beautiful.
Na'aseh zechuyos. That's the Gemara says that. It will become merits. Well, now I'm not suggesting, therefore, that we sin all day long, so we can turn them into, so we can have a cake and eat it too.
Okay. So when you take to do something, you know, learn more Torah, go to more Shiurim.
Yeah.
Is that only on your plate, or can you say that it's also to help do tikkun olam, or?
You can have that intent. You can have that intent, yes. But whether it will work as effective as if God had assigned you that's questionable. You know, you could certainly have that intent. You know, and besides, anyway, any mitzvah you do helps the Jewish people. Why? Because the Jewish people are one body. And if your arm feels great, guess what? The other arm will feel also great. See, all the Jews are just different, appendages to the body.